everyone. Welcome to The Right Talk. As always, our fearless leader, Words Can Sing Too, and our second fearless leader, One Minor Edit, and myself, Writer's Crush. We are here with the amazing Amanda Ross, who is the author of A Stare with Love, and we're so excited for her to be here because today our show is about the right bite. We're going to be discussing vampires and werewolves. Some of us are a team werewolf, and don't worry, we forgive them for that without them even asking. And
I don't like either. So
some people just make some choices in life, and it is what it is. So I guess we'll go ahead and let Amanda introduce herself really quick before we get into the topic, because if I get started, I'm gonna get really excited. So Amanda.
Hey everybody, I'm Amanda Ross, like you said, author of To A Stare with Love, copy here. And yeah, I'm an indie author. This is my first book, and it is as much about magic as it is about vampires. I have loved vampires since I was a kid. Team vampire over here. Queen of the Night, reppin'. And so I obviously wanted to bring them into my book, and I'm excited to just throw down and talk about vampires and werewolves and why vampires are better.
Okay, so this also this will bring us right along to on, did you choose werewolves or vampires? I'm definitely team vampire, and so is Amanda. Why don't you tell us why you chose werewolves, Latedra? Just, let's talk about our choices. Everyone's making them.
I don't know. I think they're just, I like the fact that they're big and scary, and they have all this magic building up in their body, and there's so many ways you can do it. I have werewolves in my book. That's probably why I'm so biased. But like, there's so many ways for you to like conjure their magic. And I think vampires are a little like one note. Like, what? You can't. What's their origin? Who knows? They just woke up one day and decided, they were vampires or something, or they can bite you on the neck and like get your blood. I mean, I feel like they've gone as far as they can go. And I think werewolves have like such a range of things that you can do with them. But that's just my opinion.
Brittny.
I'm team neither, okay? Like, I'm just so sick of vampires and werewolves right about now. Like, the only vampire that I will sit and watch is either Alucard from Hellsing or the vampires from Castlevania, the anime. So that's about as far as I'm going to go.
You were supposed to pick a side, Brittny.
No.
No help. Okay, so what are some of your favorite vampire movies?
Vampire in Brooklyn. It's a classic.
I don't gotta be as excited about that as we are, because Eddie Murphy is a vampire, and the beautiful Angela Bassett is in that movie. I don't know what more y'all needed. That was amazing.
I know. Yeah. I bet the pitch meeting was Angela Bassett, Eddie Murphy, and then they were like, "Oh, done. Okay, cut Trent, whatever movie you want to make."
Like, yes.
I would also say 30 Days of Night. I think it's very.
That was a different one though. Like, it was really good with the way that they decided that for 30 days and nights, all these vampires are just going to be out here living their best life in the cold. And it's like, oh, and they don't use Josh Hartnett enough.
And they're like creepy. That vampire movies generally don't creep me out. That definitely was one that I watched it and I couldn't sleep that night. Just no sleep came to me. I think also, I wanted to like Van Helsing, the one with Hugh Jackman, and I think that there are so many elements that could be good. It's just not one of my favorites.
That's true.
But I can tell you have a soft spot, it looks like.
I'm a fan of Hugh Jackman.
Oh, well.
That's why I watched it, and I was like, I could have kept that hour and a half. Yeah, it's a little bitter, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, those are some of my favorite. What about y'all?
Tedra.
Favorite vampire movies? I'm gonna go with the ones we just watched. We watched Underworld, and they were pretty good. I can't, off the top of my head, honestly say too many, because when I watch like movies like that, I'm probably watching like some zombies or something, and not too much like vampire werewolf kind of thing. Can I say which movie that really disappointed me though, that had werewolves in it, and that was Blood and Chocolate? Do y'all remember that?
Oh my God.
Blood for
Yeah.
Chocolate or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I was so upset with that movie, and I think I really liked the book, but I can't remember. It's been a while.
I didn't read the book for that one. Like I watched the movie, and I guess I should have went ahead and read the book, but I watched it and I was like, what? Like it was a lot of, I guess for me, they spent a lot of time on the touchy-feely aspect of being human more than they did on being a werewolf. For me, that was a little jarring.
Yeah.
But I was excited that there was more spec fic out, so I didn't complain too hard.
Yeah.
Cool Breezy F said Queen of the Jam, and then threw up the hands.
Oh, Interview with the Vampire, Queen of the Jam. Okay, so Interview with the Vampire was actually one of the first books I had on audio tape. Okay, audio tape, and I would listen to it getting ready for school in high school. So soft spot all of Anna Rice's work. I liked Interview with the Vampire a little bit more than Queen of the Damned, but what do y'all think?
So I loved Interview with the Vampire, but Queen of the Damned was, oh my God, that was frustrating because it's like they had the book and they were like, we're only going to take the parts out of the book that we think are exciting, and we're not going to put anything else at all in that movie. Like it was so weird. Like characters that they're like, so this is Marius, and you're like, but how is that Marius? Like I don't, like she's literally like, Anne Rice does a very good job of like describing everything. Like you know what the crown molding on the walls look like. If there's a comforter, she's describing what their thread count is, and you're telling me that you couldn't make the vampires look like the vampires? That movie was a lot of frustrating. But Stuart Townsend is an awesome actor, but Lestat was maybe not his character. And I don't blame that on him. I blame it on the writers. Like I feel like they were given the tools and they said, nah, like we don't want any of that. Like we're good. Like we don't.
But the soundtrack though.
Oh, the soundtrack's amazing.
Still listen to it actually, like
all the time.
So lit. What about The Lost Boys? Because I forgot about this one when I was listing off my favorites.
That's such a good one.
I like The Lost Boys, and I'm an 80s kid, so I was like, yes, saxophone player, come through.
Oiled sexy sax for the win. Yes.
I didn't even understand. I was like, what? There's a whole dance segment in here for no reason, but we're going to enjoy that because they're offering it to us. Thank you.
And you give me that song. I heard that song play at a Halloween party last year. Let me tell you, everybody came to the dance floor. It still holds up. For real. It still holds up.
Well, Breezy F said the previous comment, like with every book to movie adaptation when y'all were talking about the differences. And then it was Aaliyah for me. So,
yes.
I
think it was Aaliyah for everybody though.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody showed up just so they could see Aaliyah. And she was only in there for like a hot minute, right?
Yeah. But I don't know if she finished the movie because I thought that she, like during the editing process is when she passed. So they didn't, there were parts that she didn't get to film. So like I said, I don't know for sure, but there was that you remember that crazy rumor where it was like her brother came in and finished the rest of the movie for her, and I was like, why would that even be a rumor or a thing? Like,
yeah, wasn't it like maybe he was doing some of the because you know how like in the movie her voice kind of sounds like it's her voice, but then there's like a whisper underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. Maybe he came in and did that, like the voiceover to kind of add that like
Oh, that would have been cool.
whispery thing to it.
I think he also did that to Lestat when he was singing. Like there was that and that voice that wasn't his. I think it was the lead singer of Korn who was doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Even no, that's the guy.
Oh, well, maybe that was the same thing that we're going for then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brittny, favorite movies? Wow, you act like I asked you what the square root of something was, girl.
Like, listen, like I am so done with
It's 9 o'clock at night.
This is like pass. Don't ask me no more questions.
That's it.
Like the only one I am going to say is, well, there aren't films, are the ones I mentioned previously, is Helsing and Castlevania.
Remind me what Helsing is. Like that sounds so familiar.
It's the vampire and the police girl. I haven't watched it in a while. I should have watched it before the show. But it's just they just go and do and handle like rogue vampires and everything. I like listening to him because I like Crispin Freeman as a voice actor. Like his voice is really nice and he's just a ham. So that's why I like watching that. And then of course Castlevania, they're trying to take out Dracula and his people because he's all upset that they torched his wife.
Yeah.
I said that very dismissively.
Didn't they make Helsing into like a live action though?
I don't know. Did they?
That sounds so familiar, but I don't remember this. I don't remember this anime at all.
They did a Dracula 20, was it 2020 or 2019? They just
that was one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was focused, it was told from the Helsing point of view, pretty much. The whole movie.
Maybe that's why.
That was actually better than I thought it would be. Like I didn't think it was going to be great because Netflix has a bad habit of like starting stuff and not finishing it. And I was pleasantly surprised with that movie. I was like, oh, look at y'all with the special effects and the ships and the people dying.
They do all right most of the sometimes.
Oh, hey for Herbert. I was like, oh, that's great.
Have y'all seen the show? I think it's called Blood Ties. It was on. Okay, so you can find it on Amazon Prime, I think, and it's about this former cop. Her name is Victoria, and she like retired from the police force in Toronto because she had like a degenerative eye disease. And on like one of her first cases, she meets a vampire who is like the bastard son of Henry VIII. And so he's this super hot guy who writes like graphic novels. And she also then is kind of still in a love triangle with her, in love with her ex-partner. So then there's like this love triangle between the three of them. And they're all trying to solve cases. And she gets drawn into all these supernatural cases. There's one with Medusa, and there's one with like a demon kid.
I want to say yes.
That was something I'm gonna watch.
This looks very familiar.
Yeah, there was only like 2 seasons, and it's super early 2000s. But I just like started rewatching it again, and I like it.
Yeah, I remember that British show. They tried to do it over here in America, but it didn't really work out. Dang. But it was a ghost, a vampire, and a werewolf all living together.
Oh, I know exactly.
I can't remember. Let me try to look it up. Being Human.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Until the last season, it started to like, I don't know what was going on with it, but it was pretty good up until a certain point. I think they got exposed or something, and it stopped being great.
Oh. Awful. Like everybody found out about them and now the secret's out and nobody cares.
Because there was like this big bloody scene, I think, and then like they were exposed. If I remember correctly, I haven't seen it in so long. But it's like the whole point of it was like for them to be mysterious and for them to be hidden in the shadows and like have this secret life. So when everybody knows about, vampires are real, werewolves are real, it's just like, well, if everybody knows, like, what's the point of me watching you?
I think my favorite vampire movie is still Bram Stoker's Dracula. that was kind of that was pretty much my introduction into, oh my gosh, vampires are sexy. It didn't hurt that Keanu Reeves was on there. I was like, oh, that's great. Look, we're all going to be watching this. And then they had that whole huge red dress and that unnecessary white outfit that Lucy was wearing. And I was like, I can get behind this. I like cosplay. I'm down. And at the time, I was so impressed. Another one that I actually my sister ran across recently that I actually dig. It's called In the Shadows. It's on Hulu. It's about
that.
Have you seen it? It's actually incredibly funny. It's these 3 vampires from the European vampires, and they come over here and they're basically like living their life and trying to, I guess, blend in, and they're not doing a great job. There's this one there's one familiar for this guy. He's their Helsing, basically. Not Helsing. He's their Renfield.
Yeah.
And he's doing all of this work and he's not getting, it's really like you're watching it and you're like, why are you still there? But what I do like the most about it is that, you know, they have the regular, I'm going to drink blood vampires, and they have this one vampire that nobody likes, and he's a psychic vampire. So he feeds off of emotions and off of like bad vibes. So he works in an office and he makes everybody upset, and that's how he feeds every day. So, you know, you have that one coworker who comes around and they're usually like talking to you about inane things and things that you just really don't have time to be talking about. And you're just like,
that is great.
Yes. And so that's how he's feeding, is when everybody is like frustrated and tired. And, you know, you clearly want to leave the conversation. That's when he starts feeding. And when they're fighting inside the house, he's feeding, and they'll start getting really tired for like no reason. So it's actually very awesome. The best part is that there's my cat is back here. And there's this part where they have this like vampire tribunal thing, but it had like Blade is there, Tilda Swinton is there, and the guy who was the producer for Thor, like all of these random stars are in this tribunal, and they're like trying to judge these guys, and they end up putting them in this pit, like in Interview with the Vampire. And then the guy who's like kind of the psychic vampire, he comes and saves them, but how they get them out of there is really weird. Like it's a sitcom, but it's actually very funny. I'm trying to think something that I just really, everything on Supernatural, like every time the vampires and werewolves show up, like every season, I've enjoyed them. I haven't had any problems with those being there. 30 Days and 30 Nights, I did. I did enjoy 30 Nights simply because the vampires weren't sexy. Like I appreciated that the main action wasn't about them trying to seduce somebody into getting blood. They're like, I'm gonna cut your head open and then we're gonna drink, and I don't know what you're gonna do about it, but this is where we're at with this. So it wasn't a lot of, oh my gosh, will you, won't you? There's love triangles. Oh, there's all this existential conversation. Nope, we're just gonna kill you and get our job done and then go to the next house. Like it was pretty nice. So there's
that's good. I love big bads like that though. Who come in and just like wreck shop and be like, yeah, I'm doing this, and just like chop some heads off unapologetically. It's great.
Oh, werewolf movies. I like American Werewolf in Paris. Don't judge me. And I love the soundtrack. The soundtrack is so good. It's so great. It's great. So that also, go ahead.
Oh, can I piggyback off what you were saying about that show? There's Charlene Harris has the Night Shift series, and like one of her vampires actually feeds like that too. Like he feeds off emotions instead of blood and stuff like that. So like you said, if they were having, like if his girlfriend is having a bad day, she'll just be like, can you do it? And like he'll take all that frustration away from her, and she gets like really tired and wants to fall asleep and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. They tied it into a book too. So
she's the same one that did the True Blood, right?
Mm-hmm. Which was good for the first 3 seasons. I just want to lay that out there. Once you get to the first 3, just do yourself a favor and take that break. And
the books were a lot better. Like I had the whole series and everything, but of course, you lend books out to folks and they don't want to give them back. But
Did you give
oh,
that a good
Cool
taste?
Breezy just asked if we got into True Blood.
She's like, she's been waiting on that one. Did she like it?
Let's see. I'll ask.
So now that we're talking about people who how they feed, how does in your head what is the best way for a vampire or werewolf to become a vampire or werewolf? The transmission, how do you feel that should take place?
I mean, I'm a sucker for it being like kind of Blade style, where you have vampires that could be made, and then you have vampires that are born, and then that kind of creates this whole, like, for lack of a better term, this like hierarchy of which vampires were born this way, and so they're better, and then the other vampires are, you know, that are made are like different, and kind of potentially playing with the vampires that are born maybe are better able to control their bloodlust, and then the ones that are made aren't. I just think that that's kind of a really cool to add some levels to it. Mm-hmm. So it's not
That's true.
one note.
Brittny.
That's true.
I know you.
Why don't you just leave me for last, because I have pretty much no comments on this subject.
Because your
this is why we read the books. This is why we watch the movies.
It's like transmission wise, I just keep it like, I guess, decide whether or not it's going to be more biological or more like on the lines of magical sorcery. Like, was there some kind of genetic mutation within a virus of some sort, and thus you got vampires? Or, you know, did somebody cast a spell and curse somebody who just gains this bloodlust that never ceases?
Oh, they did that on was it the originals or Vampire Diaries? I think for the originals they did that. And they had them, like, the mom, so the werewolves were already there and established, right? And the werewolves kept on, like, they were like these, just like animals. I want to say, no, they wasn't. Okay, so the werewolves kept on like attacking something, and so the mom was like, I'm going to use this blood magic and make us better and stronger than them so we can defend our village. And so she ended up creating them like that with magic. And I hadn't seen that before inside a vampire like folk or whatever. So that was pretty cool. And then she ended up like, you know, mating with one of the werewolves and like had a baby and all that stuff. Our comment box is lighting up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to write.
Oh no.
No, I was about to read them too, but carry on. You can go ahead.
As I was talking, let's see. First, Cool Breezy, when I asked about did she like true, I'm sorry, not she. I don't know if you're Cool Breezy F said, I agree, it got progressively ridiculous. And then said, but I only watched the show, which I said, oh, the books were way better. Then Cassandra said, what about Hemlock Grove and Penny Dreadful? Okay, and then Cool Breezy said something else, but Hemlock Grove, I was severely disappointed because it took all of that just to tell us that they were vampires. Like, I think I finished like the first season, maybe started the second one. And then I was like, you know what? I'm done. I
think the first season is definitely like better than, so I've read the book, and I think in most cases the book is better. And so it's that situation where kind of like Game of Thrones, where you have certain seasons that draw from all text that's already there, and then once that text stops being there, then the writing kind of has to stand on its own. And then that kind of really shows you how good of a writer the people in the writing room are, because if they can't, you know, hold up that kind of same level, then why would you adapt it, bro? Like, you played yourself, because your source material is gone. You gotta make it as good. So
hey, Bree.
Oh wow.
Cool Breezy's name is Bree. She was like, I'm a she her.
Oh.
Did y'all watch Penny Dreadful? Because that was mentioned by Cassandra. No,
I haven't
watched the first episode.
I watched the first season. I will say that both Penny Dreadful and Hemlock Grove did a very good job of being atmospheric. Like when you watched it, you felt kind of like you were in the time period or the location that the world is set in. What they didn't do very well in both of those, I feel, was that the transitions to different I guess beats in the show. So in Penny Dreadfuls, you have the whole vampire storyline, but then you also have the storyline for Frankenstein, and then you also have the storyline for, oh my gosh, the scientist who turns into a monster. There's a whole name for him. It's not
Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And they didn't flow through those storylines very well. So there were parts where the story didn't feel like it was the same story any longer, even though they would kind of jump back and you're like, oh yeah, well, this is happening with this character, but we're going to go back over here because this character is hotter. So we're going to focus over this one over here. Forget this storyline, but this one right here, we're going to focus all of that. But
do you think it would have been better if they did? Do you think it would have been better if they did like one monster per like season, or if like they wrapped up one monster, went to another monster, kind of like Supernatural did?
Kind of if they had made it flow through. Like if you were going to keep all of those storylines, it would have been better if they had wrapped up at least a large portion of that particular storyline before introducing another one. It was kind of like the what's that show that they had on Netflix where Luke Cage, you had this one right here, like this whole bad guy that could have carried you through the entire series, but you weren't sure, I guess, if you were going to get another series. So you tried to jump in as much as you could to create interest instead of like building interest with that one, maybe adding one more if you had time to like wrap up this one. But it was, like I said, the way they transitioned through the stories was really weird. But otherwise, it was decent. And once again, I'm a Josh Hartnett fan, so I was like, okay, yay.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think, like, sidebar, I think that's one of the things that Supernatural does really well is that you have this season-long big bad that we're focusing on, and then they have these kind of monster of the week episodes. That, I mean, I always look forward to those episodes because usually they're funny, or just like super random, like the one with the imaginary friend, or the yellow fever one where Dean gets scared from like that ghost sickness or whatever. And I think that that's definitely a good formula to keep if you're trying to tie all these different storylines in, where you have this overarching thing, and that thread carries through every episode, and then you are able to kind of just pop in, where are they this week on their cross country road trip.
Cool Breezy also said, at the time I was reading Anita Blake, trying to catch up. Do any of you follow the Anita Blake series? I definitely got sucked in and enjoyed that series.
She had me for the first 5 books. The first 5, because after the first 5, suddenly it becomes porn, which is fine. I have nothing against sex scenes, but there's no way that Anita Blake is fighting crime, raising zombies, managing a werewolf society, and having this much sex, like in the span of like 24 hours. So she was giving her super stamina, superpowers, and way more mental health than any normal person should have to have all of these things happening at one time. But the first 5 books were so good. And it was so aggravating because she hooked me in, and I bought all of them within a span of like 2 weeks. And then I got past 5 and I was just like, why you like this? Well, okay, what are you doing to me? Like, we're best friends. Like, Laurel, for real? For real. Why are you? Okay, girl, we're gonna keep going, see if this happens. No, okay. Well, I was disappointed with her fairy series, the Ashley Gray ones. I think that's how you say her name. But the vampire books up till 5 were so good. Like, if you get the chance to do it, one of the things that she does that's really cool with the vampires is that all of them have one special power, and the special power that they have is like their special power. So you have this one vampire who, unfortunately, he calls butterflies. Like that's his power. Like he's like he's literally the most. And I'll tell you in the book, he is the most dangerous vampire in the world at the time of this book that's being written. But his animal to call is butterflies. So when he comes into the scene, you don't see him at first. She slowly introduces him because she's sitting kind of in the yard, but this butterfly lands on her arm and you're watching it taste the salt on her skin, and suddenly all these other butterflies start creeping into the scene. And she does such a good job with transitioning you into like micro to macro really, really well. So she takes you from the smallest part all the way to the largest part. And you're just like, oh, that's so cool. Who cares if he's calling butterflies? He can call Subway sandwiches for all I care. This is amazing. And it sucks you in like that. But then, like I said, she gets to the other part, and you're just like, okay, Laurel, okay, Mrs. Hamilton, what we doing? But yes, her books were so good.
I haven't read them, so adding that to my long TBR list.
Yeah.
Oh, Breezy says she made it to the 11th book. And you should see the emojis. If y'all are in the YouTube chat, you should see the emojis.
Have any of y'all read Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black?
No. That sounds
I'm a Holly
funny,
Black fan now.
So it actually is one of the books that I kind of credit with my like inspiration for my book. And so basically it's vampires in this world, they turn cold, and it's kind of like a virus, right? Where you kind of catch it and you get sick and you go cold and then you become a vampire. And all of the and it's like people know that they're vampires and they are in these cold towns, which is basically a city full of vampires. And then the people that live there are there to kind of service the vampires and are like their slaves or their food. And this one like human ends up in a cold town. I don't remember why, but the town also has like streaming services, like 24-hour streaming services. So if you are not in a cold town, you can kind of like an MTV, like Real World or, you know, Big Brother-esque kind of situation where it's reality TV, watch the vampires partying all night long kind of thing. And I like it. It was really good. And it definitely kind of, again, helped give me that inspiration of like, what if like vampires just doing normal shit? You know, vampires are like, they are on Twitter. They do reality TV. They do their makeup. They wear suits and they drive cars and they, you know, do all of this normal shit. And they're not like, this is one of the reasons why I like What We Do in the Shadows is that they are kind of stuck in that like Victorian kind of thing. They can't figure out modern world. But what about vampires that are turned yesterday? Where do they line up? So I definitely think it's worth checking out.
I think that's one of my pet peeves with a lot of vampire stuff is that people don't often account for how having a creature like that exist in any time period affect society. Like if you have human beings that have super strength, have the ability to basically seduce anybody they please, and they have to feed on blood, like that is going to affect society in some kind of way. And I often don't see that. Of course, I haven't read any vampire stuff as of late, aside from the books that we chose to read. But having a mention of that or showing how the existence of vampires affect society, I would appreciate a lot more.
Well, let me ask you this before you go on. So do you feel that because a lot of the stories that surround vampires is that they try not to interact with the rest of the world. They hide during the day. They stay in their covens for the most part. Do you feel that society would change that much considering that they're actively trying not to be?
Well, my thing is you got government. Somebody's going to know something, and not every vampire, especially those in the modern day, and particularly probably those that are young, are not going to want to stay in undercover forever.
That's good.
So it's going to leak out some kind of how. Now the magnitude of that leak will vary, and it depends on how you want to write the story. Do the government want to keep it a secret, or do they want to let people know that there are these creatures out here? You need to be aware. Are they going to make them afraid of them, or are they going to have like civil discourse with them? Like, like take into consideration those factors. Like, for me personally, I can't just like, oh, I'm just going to plop this creature here that needs blood, and they live in an urban area, so it's not like you can go out into the fields if you live in the country and go find a deer. Like, how are they going to get their food? Like, and if they're prevalent, if they're like if they're prevalent in society and society is okay with their existence and they're like fully ingrained into it, then why aren't there like vampire fast food joints? That's a market.
So
Please write that book, Brittny. I need that whole thing.
Where's Amanda?
also in my book, I do kind of play with that, right? So in my book, the like president of the United States is a vampire, and he came out of the coffin during the election cycle, and he's also super conservative, very misogynistic. His campaign slogan is "Restore." I'm sure that sounds very familiar. And so he becomes president, and everybody again is like, hold up, how did this happen? But because of him, all these other celebrities and politicians and stuff start coming out and saying, I'm also a vampire, I too drink blood. And what ends up happening is like boutique blood bars get developed where people that are vampires create clubs and stuff that service vampire clients. Like there's one that I write about in here, I called it Plus Minus, where it's run by two vampire sisters and their spouses. And the top half is like a sunny hipster cafe where you can go and get your overpriced avocado toast and your latte and listen to like Natasha Bedingfield, right? But then the minus part of it is like a dark underground kind of cafe that makes you think back to the 20s when they were like bootlegging liquor, and you know you're not supposed to be there and it's dangerous, and you get your blood, you get your alcohol laced with blood, and you know the drinks are like a michelada with type B blood, and you can get like a frappuccino with blood liqueur kind of thing. So definitely that's in my book where they're fully integrated. And there's also kind of thinking about the ramifications of that. There are like blood laws that are getting passed that kind of regulate, okay, this, you need blood, but where do you get that from? Do you get that from humans? Do you get that from animals? And it regulates not only like the commodification, the sale of blood, but then also if you own an establishment, whether or not you're allowed to have people fight somebody else, for instance, and drink their blood in your establishment. So check it out. I count for all.
I would totally love to visit once or twice and like Instagram it up and be like, hey guys.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Like, and I appreciated that in your book, so just throwing it out there. So thank you.
This also brings us, oh, go ahead, Brittny. Go ahead, Tedra.
Cassandra mentioned Strain. I haven't seen that show.
I haven't seen it. Is it good? Did she like it? Tell her about it.
So answer in a few minutes. It's lagging.
While we're waiting on her answer, I guess this brings us to our next question is, are they human first or are they born vampires? Like in your ideal world where let's say you're all building a world, except for you, Amanda, you've already built one. In everybody else's world, when you're building vampires, what is your preferred method of transition? So are they human first, and then we're making that emotional arc in to being a vampire, or have they been vampires for like 80,000 years and they're weary and they're trying to get back to human, or are they happy being vampire? They like being like having all these long dresses and going to these swanky parties. Like, where are y'all at with that?
Did we talk about that on IG one day?
I think so.
I think we did. Cassandra said.
Let me go to my cheat sheet real quick.
Cassandra said the show was all right, but it's like a government conspiracy cover-up. No, I'm guessing. Interesting. I have to check out a season. I think it's on Hulu. I remember seeing it. She said there's a strain that creates vampires. Interesting. There was also a show. I'm sorry, I know we're getting off topic again. There was also a show on Netflix too that was that had Ian Somerhalder in it.
Yeah, I was just like, didn't someone else do that?
Yeah, so I haven't seen it yet, but it looked interesting, and plus I like him sometimes, so I might watch it. Just because.
I think I scrolled by it and saw that he was in it and was like, he just stay like playing in vampire stuff. I bet he is the biggest vampire nerd because it's like Vampire Diaries and then this. He just knows his lane, I guess.
The girl from Twilight, the what's her
name?
The short girl, the short bob, what's her name? I cannot remember her name.
Nikki Reed.
Yeah.
Oh, they're married?
Yeah, they got married, and like everything about his life revolves around vampire, which is fair. If this is what's making your money, then you immerse yourself into that. Like,
yeah, so you do what you need to do.
And like when I was like, oh, like now that you mention it, like yeah, a lot of his life is revolved around vampire. Actually, before we move on, I guess the show because I was going to say it for the witch episode, but so Vampire Diaries, did y'all watch that?
I did.
The first couple, like the first 3 seasons, I think I watched.
I binged the whole thing.
I'm not going to talk about the ending because I'm a little salty about it.
No, we're not going to talk about the ending.
Maybe some of you that haven't watched it, but anyway.
Yes. We'll have a conversation, Sheena.
Like I'm not going to start that conversation because we won't have any show left. But
it's one of those. It's one of those like those Twilight things. Like you can talk about everything that are I should say more like the dragon people, Game of Thrones. Like you can talk about so many ways that it went wrong. So many ways they should have fixed it, did it better. Like it was a mess.
Moments they went wrong though. Like that's the weird thing about it. Like you can be like, so episode 4.
You can pinpoint exactly where it was just going left.
Yeah, like you're like, don't do me like that. But it's just for that series, I think it had like 7, 8 seasons. Like it was a long. It was a long.
I binged them when we first quarantined.
Wow, how long did it take you?
Honestly, I don't remember because I remember I started watching Legacies and like the girl on there, she's like a tribrid or something like that. And so I was like, this is interesting. I want to know her origin. So I was like, oh, but I can't start with the originals. I have to go like all the way back. But I wasn't that interested in the originals. By the time I actually made it to the originals, I was just like,
I wanted to watch originals, but I watched the Vampire Diaries first. Had I watched the originals first, I think I would have enjoyed it more had I not watched Vampire Diaries first.
Yeah.
Because I understand like how people are in this other one and just like, but I'm salty and this is not okay that he's here, but whatever. Like it's fine. Like it's fine.
I was like frustrated with the originals by the time I got to the originals.
Yeah.
And I was just like, first off, y'all have no character growth from like when we last seen y'all like 2 or 3 seasons ago to now in your fresh series. Like it didn't make any sense to me. I was just like, let's not do this again.
And there were a lot of forgiveness on that show that I don't necessarily know that I would have. So you basically toyed with, raped, and bit my best friend, and then we're going to go off and get married. I'm still looking at this person every day. We're hanging out, we're chill. You kidnapped her, but that's all right. I love you. Like it's so like it's like I said, it was a lot of things that they put to the side that I'm too petty to do those sort of things. So like when you're watching it, you're just like, but you're not mad? That's your friend. Y'all all sitting at the same table. Y'all
be mad for them though.
Yeah, like and you're outside watching, and you're like, and you did this, and you did this, and they're just like, no, that didn't happen. And you're like, but episode 5, like it's so weird.
Weren't they books at first?
Yes, they were. They were very good books. They came out when I was in I was in high school, like maybe my junior year, and it was one of those books. It's kind of like the Babysitter's Club, where everybody was like, "Oh my God, you have to read this series." and it was only like 2 or 3 books long at that point. But everyone was like, you had a team. You were either Team Damon or you were Team Stefan, and if you weren't cool, you definitely didn't pick Damon. So it is what it is. And a lot of you could tell like by the person that they chose who was going to have some problematic relationships in their life, because that's who they were drawn to. And you're just like, okay, well, there are people
I
out
also like
Loki. Besides,
do you remember House of Night? Those books.
who were they by?
I think it was House of Night.
Look that up.
Let me see.
By PC Cast and Kristen
Yeah.
Cast.
Yeah, those like marks and all that. I actually liked that series up until like a certain point, and then I was just like, oh, okay, that's enough. But I think they had like a whole like underground like world. Like they barely interacted with humans except for like Heath, who was like her boyfriend or best friend or something like before that. Like before she became a vampire or something. I don't remember how she became a vampire. But I think it's something that she aged into, maybe. I can't remember. But yeah, so the way they made their government and stuff work, you probably would have liked it. I mean, it's a Ya book, Brittny, but it's Ya. So
she's like, whatever.
So, but the way they have like their little system and their government and whatnot works, it's pretty cool until they get into all like the love stuff, and then of course they, teeters off a little bit. Well, what was the original question, Sheena? We got so off topic.
So it was, how do you, when you write your characters, do you picture them going from human to vampire, or vampire to human, or do you just like they're just vampire out the gate and they enjoy being vampire?
I like them.
Be a touch of both.
I like them coming out born vampires, wrecking up some shit. I'm a strong believer in like, and in my Sasha Grey series, it's not. I don't actually do that, but I'm a strong believer in like having like my supernatural creatures being born in the supernatural world. Like I already know about it, acquainted with it. Like I like that. I don't like having to teach my character about what's going on. So except for that one. So that's it. Yeah. Always one, right?
I agree. I started that in my book where they are all vampires, because I feel like we've seen enough of a lot of those stories where it's somebody getting turned into a vampire and then they spend the first 100 pages figuring it out, or like they don't know and it's like, oh, I must have gotten really drunk at this party last night. Oh no, I have a fever. Or like in that Once Bitten movie with Jim Carrey where he's like, I just really need to eat meat, and they just start eating raw meat and everybody's like, this is great. We've seen all of that happen. And so I do like Latedra said, I like the idea of it. They just are werewolf, they're vampire, and you kind of just start the story like somewhere along in their journey.
Brittny.
What? It just depends. Like it can be a mix of both. It just depends on how you're building your story. With that in mind, I guess if they're already a vampire, if they've been born a vampire, then for me it's how do you perceive the vampire then? Like, are they more bestial in nature? Are they more like animals who have sentience, or are they?
This we did talk about IG. Oh no, I was saying this we did talk about on IG. I remember that.
Yeah. So, or like as you mentioned, or were they human first and then they got turned? Like, because that's going to kind of dictate how they behave. Because if you were always a vampire, born and raised, and you actually live within a society where it's predominantly vampires, this is how society operates, this is what you know, and going out and getting people, depending on how you build the vampire society, how long they've been around, how well established they are. Like, it could be normal for that character who was born and raised as a vampire to just go and snatch a human, take them back, and just feed on them. That's not a problem. That may not be a problem in their society. But when they venture out and start intermingling with humans and their existence starts becoming basically mainstream in human society, and now you have a conflict because how they live their life, that is normal to them. There is no wrong in that until they meet human society, which has different standards when it comes to morality and all that sort of thing. So, but if they're a human who got turned into a vampire, now you've got to say, especially if you're the one, especially if it's potentially a religious character or somebody with some strong morals, now they have to deal with that. Like, I never want to kill anybody. That's just wrong. But now you're going to have to depend on somebody's life source. Yeah, you can go after animals, this, that, and the third, but oftentimes in stories, animal blood is not as appeasing as human blood. So if that is the case, then it's going to reach a point to where that nature, that urge is going to take over, and they're going to have to commit basically a crime. So there's a lot of dynamic that you can play with on either side. It just depends on, as you mentioned, whether they were vampire born and raised or if they went from human to vampire. And then, because I think there was a post in one of the groups, and I think the poster asked whether or not if your lover or somebody that you love is like a significant other or whatever, you love this person very much and that person loves you very much, and that person wants you to become a vampire so you can stay with them forever, would you? And I basically wrote a dissertation on why that is a big fat no.
Interesting dissertation.
Like, because when you're born and raised as a human, your concept of time is going to be different. You expect to live probably at the most, if you're lucky, 100 years old. You didn't think about eternity. People have a hard time staying in a relationship for 3 years, let alone 1,000 years. So how will your concept of relationship change? Are y'all actually going to be still together, like in a monogamous relationship for 1,000 years? Or is this going to turn into an open relationship? How are you going to handle living for those thousands of years? Because if you're living that long, then that means you're going to be here to witness all sorts of destruction on this planet. You're going to witness species getting wiped out. And if we're in a nuclear winter and a lot of stuff has died, how will you survive that as a vampire and immortal?
Miss World Builder over here.
I mean, girl, you just can't enjoy this love story.
You know? Pretty like
These are very real questions, though. Like, and oftentimes when you're looking at that, there's a lot of vampires who are like, "Oh, well, we were together, but then she left me." And you're like, "Yeah, probably."
I mean, don't they do that in What We Do in the Shadows, where like two of the characters have been together for so long that they both, it's not like they both have like an open relationship where they both just step out on each other, but they're cool with it because they've been together for so long. And they're so like, you know, when you're in a relationship, you don't cross the line with your partner, but they've been together for so long that they're kind of like, like, forget you, I don't care, I'm leaving you. But then they somehow like wear matching, if you notice, they wear like matching outfits almost. And so it's like they're so in sync that they are just matching their clothes, but then also they just like want to do whatever with somebody else. So I think that definitely kind of touches all of that world building. Thinking about the nuclear winter and then species extinction. And
I know, I was like, love triangle. Brittany's over here on this level, nuclear winter. I'm like, oh.
Because you're still perceiving the relationship in the sense of human time. This creature, if he was a pureblood, born and raised as a vampire, he's going to have a completely different concept. He's going to have a whole different concept. His demeanor is going to be totally different probably from what you're used to because he or she has lived through all this stuff.
That's like that, what's the book? God dang it.
First of all,
It's
that's the
just-
love of her life.
They recently just had like a series out on Sundance or something. But the vampire, he fell in love with the witch. You know that book, that series?
I think I've seen it. Like they takes a large part in the library.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
I
I've
can't
seen
think of it. But it's kind of like that. Like she wants to like hurry up and like rush things. And she's like, let's get to the good parts. And he's all like, but do you know what that means being with me? And I
Yeah.
appreciate him like pumping the brakes on it. Because you can tell in the book, like they obviously have affection toward each other. And he has his reservations for a reason. Because like even though she is a witch, she still has like all these human like feelings and this human blood running through her system. And she's not thinking like, if we get super excited, like I can hear your blood like rushing. Like that's what's making me excited, and you too. And I want both of them. And I appreciate him like pumping the brakes and like, you need to think about this. Not only are we breaking like legal like vampire witch rules, but this is also something that can like potentially change your life if things go wrong like that. You know what I mean? And she's just like, no, let's stop cuddling. Let's do something else. And so I thought that was just funny.
I think it's the Immortal Love series. Is that what it's called?
Is it? That doesn't sound right though. I'll find it and drop the thing. I'm drawing a blank on it.
In the meantime, we have comments from Cool Breezy.
Oh,
It's more fun to read about a vampire's daily experience because it answers questions instead of creating more. And I really appreciate that about To Astera as well. So you have another fan.
We got a fan.
Hey!
I don't know if dabbing is still in, so I'm just gonna be like,
It's okay, Joe. We'll make it. I don't honestly have a problem either way with how somebody brings a werewolf or a vampire into their story. The only thing I don't like is when they've brought them into that world, or the vampire who is trying to become human or etc. They spend like a whole chapter disbelieving everything. Like you just found out that vampires are real, but you don't want to believe any of these other things are real. Like I don't understand I don't understand why you're still suspending your belief on these like certain things. And you'll spend a whole chapter convincing them that these things are true. And like, I don't know what more you needed. Like, so that always bothers me in books. Like, I don't understand.
That too, when we were watching Blade, you was like, I appreciate how the lady and like the main lady character, the human character, how she was just like going with the flow.
Yeah, like immediately she's like, and this is happening. They didn't spend like 8 years. Like she may have been like, well, maybe this is not true for like maybe a second. And then she got bit and she's like, oh yeah, okay, well, moving on. Nothing to talk about, nothing longer.
Well, and like in this day and age, who doesn't like we know what a vampire is, we know what a werewolf looks like, we know what those characteristics are. And I think that kind of story would be much cooler if you set it back in like 1200s or whatever, where it's like you don't have the language to know what this creature is, that is like they can't be out in the sun, whatever, and kind of exploring that of like, how did this word get assigned, or how did all of these things, people research and find out that this thing exists and then assigned a name for it, and then how did that become global? So somebody write this down so we can make a story about this.
Yes, I was just about to ask, please write that. Like I need an origins. That's what I need right now.
Oh, shameless plug for you writers out there. We are looking for NaNoWriMo people. So, join our group and whatnot. Let's make a story together.
Hey.
Yeah.
But Cassandra found the book I was talking about. She was it's a Discovery of Witches.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. I think isn't that a series? Did they have a second book? I remember reading that book when I worked at the library.
3 books, but I honestly didn't feel compelled enough to keep reading the second book. I felt like they took a really long time to get to nowhere. I feel like the first book was made basically establishing their relationship and also establishing how blind the heroine is. Because honestly, she had all these powers, and I felt like she had no desire to even learn them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she only wanted to learn them once she was prompted by her vampire lover. And to me, y'all already know, I like a strong heroine. So I couldn't stand that part, and I didn't want to have her go into another world where she is obviously like, she doesn't know anybody. She doesn't know anything. So she's reliant on him so much. So that's, to me, I felt like that was going to make her even less likable in my eyes. So I was like, let me just keep her where I know she is.
I only remember like at the beginning there was a book they were looking at, and there was like they were just talking about this book. I think it was supposed to be something special. I could be totally wrong because I haven't read it in years. I know I only read it once. And I got engaged because I want to know what this book is, and then the book never comes back up, and I'm like,
like they mention it, but it's not like, it's not as big as it is. And honestly, I feel like if I read the second and third book, like I feel like it probably could have been condensed, and you could have saved us a lot of trouble and time. You know what I mean? Or maybe I should have just watched the show and not read the books, because maybe the show is a little bit better than the books. But I read the book, then I watched the show, and I was disappointed with both. So,
Aww.
I know, I wanted it to be so good too. It had a great premise. It started out really strong, and then all of a sudden, she finally decided, I'm gonna give in, and I'm gonna love this vampire, and that was it.